explanation around what the Sonnets of a Hospital Lift is. So it's a poem written about end-of-life care in this trust, and it's around a single person visited by his wife, but it's around about the impact that this individual has on the staff that are caring for him. But it's seen from the perspective of the lift. So the lift has got a voice. So I'm going to play the lift. Rebecca is going to be all the female voices, and Chris is going to be the male voices. Sonnets from a Hospital Lift. A lift is a confessional where feelings find words. Come, enter the emptiness, find within the silence confidence to let your feelings surface. The noise, only my stainless steel doors closing. Your fingers squeeze your locket together, keeping the photo of you both safe, holding each other for better, for worse.
Hope you are going to be better today. The house keeps asking questions. The wind's rattling the letterbox, wants to know where you are. The moan of the radiator pipes is spiteful, saying, you're never coming home. The jingling of the fridge makes me nervous. The dog keeps sniffing the hospital bag. Every morning, your side of the bed looks bereft, unruffled. Even the flowers on the duvet look forlorn.
Breathe in deeply. Did you feel it? That's me, raising you up. Here I am, your thought catcher, like a cathedral who gathers prayer.
For the first time in my dreams, we are not together. I'm walking alone towards the end of a long pier, or waiting for your bus, but you never get off.
When you hung out his washing this morning, you forgot to lock the back door. You've left the Lourdes water on the dresser. So the second person getting in the lift. A nurse from the Philippines plays the game of cricket at work. Come in, John Paul Rodriguez, eyes down on your phone for the cricket scores. It's 10 years since we flew out to recruit you from a country dependent on remittance. Still thinking of staying or just saving? Your kids are laughing in the school playground. You have a home on a nearby council estate in one of the poorest areas in England. You must have noticed in the NHS we try to do things a little differently. It's expected to be personal with strangers, to find who's underneath the organs and illness. So when he bowls at you, am I getting worse? Resist the temptation to duck the question.
He asked me, what was the point of all this exercise? He just wanted to talk about the cricket. He was sick of taking tablets. I explained the importance of making an effort. He felt too weak to walk the corridor. I said, don't you want to live for as long as possible? We talked about his innings. I asked him what he had told his wife, but he gave me the umpire's finger. I asked if he had any children, but he just looked through me. I could hear a wheeze and there was blood in his tissues. I said I would put him in the shower, but he said he couldn't be bothered. When I finished, he seemed to sense he wasn't going to be long at the crease.
Your finger pressing my 3rd floor button is the same number, John Paul, as your front door back in the Philippines, 6,700 air miles away, behind which your elderly father waits every night to speak to you on Skype. He's warned your mother not to mention what the doctor said about a triple bypass and how much it was going to cost. When you feel you've been thrown a particular derogatory comment, you smile, lifting the bat high to let it go wide, knowing half of what you earn goes home to put your younger brother through high school. The third person gets in. From the deepest places, giving tries to fill an emptiness. Susan of all the professionals who look in my metal mirrors, I sense you can see through to somewhere different, to where there is meaning in the chance in the coincidence of chance situations. In here, in this small confessional, I hear the secrets and decisions individuals cannot keep to themselves. Sitting at the bedside of dying patients, you are often given an open invitation to enter into their diminishing world and hear their choices and decisions that have made them who they are.
He kept in place a high wall of bravado, keeping those he loved on the other side. He pretended nothing was serious until I asked what his worst fear was. Not being forgiven for the things he'd done, and his wife on her own, finding him slumped in the chair. The walls between us disappeared, and he found himself deep in the soon I won't be here.
Dante accompanied Virgil on his soul-searching journey down through the rings of experience to heal what was wounded and refashion an alternative ending from one that seemed predetermined. Your compass is to listen intimately and avoid the enticement of tangents, walking silently beside anyone into the fires of their deepest fears. You are intuitive with every phrase, tone, the length of every sentence, until the listener is convinced that someone has found where they've been hiding.
Delicate conversations are like diffusing a high explosive. One wrong word, and you are gone.
You look down into a chasm of restless emptiness. Your brother left when you were 8. You were told to watch over him. He ran out in front of a moment that had no future for him and without any ending for you. Now you wander the landscapes of loss in others. You stood on the banks of the river Styx and have tried to bribe the ferryman for a quick trip over or for any news. He said, stay close to the dying. In moments when their speech seems confused, when they talk of relatives in a crowd waiting, there you might catch a glimpse of him, waving.
When we eased our way through the circles of his known silences, he remembered his voice, belligerent and out of control. I am an archaeologist for any small treasure of good acts, sustenance for this journey inward.
Fourth person gets into the lift. The top of bedside lockers sing about the unloved. Come on in, Helen, our secret chef. A hospital is a hidden restaurant, visiting wards instead of tables, encouraging reluctant patients to try the jazzed-up protein drinks to shake awake the elusive appetite. You can immediately tell how much a patient's loved. An abundant bedside locker means he's an oasis in someone's life. An empty table with only water is as barren as a mile of desert. Here you're reluctant to leave, opening a hamper of suggestions wrapped in a generous smile.
If he doesn't eat, he won't get diarrhea, and his wife won't have to wash his pajamas. If he pretends he's eaten, there's a relief on the face, and he spends the rest of the visit trying to keep it there.
You explain the ingredients for life, minute material meandering down arteries, calories, proteins, fats and carbohydrates, all combining into a kilojoule of energy to make possible the long, tight embrace of his wife that he never wants to end.
He thought about saving up his morphine tablets and taking them all at once, but fears his son would think him a coward. He regrets shouting and letting his anger get out of control. He can't remember when their relationship deteriorated. His son works in this trust. Was sure he saw him once looking at him in X-ray. He knows it affects his wife when he refuses to visit. Feels responsible and wishes he'd been someone else.
Entering into conversations at the bedside of patients makes of you a clairvoyant. There's a certain look, silk-thin skin, the loss of body mass. These are the ones you won't be asking the restaurant to order a taxi home. The fifth person that enters the lift. The pharmacist listens for the squeak of ice in difficult conversations. Come in, Layla. Assalamu alaikum. Like the game of hide and seek, you learned early how to be discreet. You always slip in here, quieter than air, seeking to hide in the shyness, but your hijab sings louder than the muezzin. End-of-life drugs are always uncomfortable to prescribe. Sadness is expected. Best to anticipate a difficult journey's end, pain, sickness, secretions and agitation. You remembered the drug boxes stacked uneven on your mother's bedside table. Made you wonder why she stopped smiling and began sleeping for most of the time.
I was a bit nervous when he first saw me coming towards him. I thought I saw his prejudice pull up a drawbridge. Reluctantly, he surrendered, coming down the stone stairs to his castle, opening his wallet to show me his wife's photo.
When she died, you had to push hard through your aunties to reach the bed. Too young to stay as long as you wanted to, but allowed to wear her apron in the kitchen. The eldest of 5 sisters became their mother overnight, a pillar to support your father, preparing everyone's meals, often alone doing the washing up, checking uniforms before school, attending parents' evenings. Like the son and heir, given without question, with an expectation to be always there, even after your father married again.
He wanted to know why so many drugs and what they would do to him. I stepped forward on thin ice, and I felt it walk further out than with anyone else. I wanted to walk backwards very slowly. Then he asked if I'd seen anyone die before. I felt the ice squeak under my feet. I nodded without words, and he realised I wasn't a foreigner to this country.
The 6th person in the lift. The occupational therapist always finds solutions by climbing. Teresa, when you rush in here, I feel there's so much energy in your urgency. A patient wants to die at home and needs an assessment. The peak of Mount Kilimanjaro appears through the clouds and nothing's going to stop you from reaching it. You drag discussions towards solutions where other professionals see only problems. Any house is adaptable. Move the settee against the wall, put the dining table and chairs in the shed. Just remember, she's losing everything. She might need to hold on to something and not lose her home to a huge hospital bed filling up the front room.
I went through what was possible, and she apologised, saying she couldn't take any more in. She wanted to tell me how every time she sits beside him, she wants to tell him about the dog in the fridge talking, but he's struggling to keep his eyes open. There are messages on the answering machine asking if she's had an accident.
Sometimes your father forgot to collect you from school. Then the dialogue began while walking home alone. One day he forgot he had a family, and the knife asked the arm, did he leave because of me? He became an obstacle of a feeling that you weren't good enough, but you decided to learn to climb. Found healing in belaying others up and over their difficulties and seeing the brightness of self-belief upon reaching the top of what's impossible.
She knows he keeps worrying about who is going to look after her, but she's always been the one who did the looking after. They are unprepared for the emptiness, filling the room pretending to be silence.
The 7th person. The newly qualified nurse thinks some words can bite. Kirsty, you're usually gallons of energy. Is this a different dress this morning? On your inside, butterflies, a churning stomach and a heart pounding to get through your chest. It's your amygdala translating the what-ifs of thought into sharp pokes of panic. Feeling clammy, slight tremor, too much adrenaline's being pumped around your system. Try Peter Pan's trick, think happy thoughts. Grab a big balloon of your happiest memory, breathe deeply, and let it carry you away within it.
When I entered the 4-bedded room, I thought it's best to avoid his eyes. When I gave him his tablets, I thought he's going to ask me. How long do I have left? How would I know? I don't know what to say, and it freaks me out. I usually fill in the silences, like a jabber for England. What if I say the wrong thing? When his wife asks, is he getting any better? I keep asking her to speak to the doctor. I try to put myself in her position, but find myself nowhere. I've never had anyone I know die before. So rather than look stupid, it's best to keep away from her.
You usually can't stop talking, but today you're quiet. Last night a student nurse doing whatever you were told. Today in a staff nurse's uniform, everyone expects you to have the answers to all their questions. For months you've walked through the same doors, and today it's not the same ward. Discharges, admissions, a constant challenge. Drug rounds and observations can't be missed. An arrest, a death, sucks any hope out of the air. Social services are insistent we need a case conference, and the patient's getting angry because his pain is getting worse. Eight, the junior doctor should test the depth before swimming with patients. Anna, when you first came in here, it was difficult to unravel why you chose medicine, submerged under 4 years of theory. Junior doctors must create a space inside themselves big enough to become a reservoir, continuously being filled to capacity. Every patient's story flows in, their ailments, history of illness, their social background, until there isn't much room for the you used to be. Honesty and compassion help you swim when the waters seem overwhelming.
My conversation got into a tangle. I tried to swim with him towards the wall of the reservoir. I encouraged him to step on the dry land of his own conclusion, but he became afraid and fell into avoidance. I watched the surface but suspected he was diving deeper to hide from me. In the end, I panicked, and I just came out with it. I think you're going to die and you can't prevent it. Then his face emerged, changed. I lifted myself out of the water, leaned forward and offered my hand. He was tiring, trying to stay afloat. I had thrown away any life jacket of hope, and now he wouldn't get in the boat.
Number 9. Number 9. The consultant hears the rickety click of a stadium's turnstile. Christopher, every individual patient out of the pandemonium of their lives, tries to explain why they are feeling unwell. You listen with such concern that they think you're going to invite them home. Someone asked about last week's patient. You only need to make certain associations presenting problems to circumstance, maybe his background, then a row of neurons illuminates the archives, and he appears from the darkness in all his story, as if he was drinking a cup of tea, sat in your kitchen.
In hindsight, I shouldn't have undertaken the endoscopy this morning, but I let him persuade me. It's the way he says, he enjoyed football, preferred cricket, supported Middlesbrough, but couldn't stand the Mackhams. It's like this, Doc. When you're 4-0 down, 10 minutes to go, do you wait to be taken off, or fight until you can't carry on? He thought it was the ICI chemicals that did the business, no health and safety protection back in them days. Every corner of the plant had a different smell. Even in the dark, he knew where he was. I suspect he digested so much pollution, it poisoned his bile.
I can take the weight, if I have to, of 28 people at any one time, and my metal spine starts to creak. Every day you carry in the heavier expectations of so many patients wanting to survive. But where do you put all that hope and disappointment? You almost crawl down the camera through the stomach and into the bowel. The size and cluster of his polyps are enormous, and the bleeds coming from the varices. You do realize before you retire, there will be over 30,000 patients occupying a space as large as Sunderland's football stadium somewhere inside you. 10. The ward sister imagines the pieta beside the patient's bed. Rebecca, Rebecca, my lift always feels lighter when you enter in here. You see everyone as significant. In your presence, staff feel better about themselves. I've never heard a negative word said about you. Other wards are always asking, are there any vacancies coming up on 24? When the work's the busiest, you're out on the floor, making sure there's dignity in the care. You set the standards, and others want to show how hard they can work for you. The chaplain heard someone crying behind your office door. You kept saying you felt you'd failed.
No matter how many times I rerun the moment, it doesn't make me feel any better. He'd just come back from endoscopy, the consultant said, just to keep him comfortable. He vomited and his pyjama jacket needed changing. His wife arrived. I asked her to give us 10 minutes.
Come on, lift up your chin. If you hadn't gone in, he could have been found alone on the floor instead of in your arms.
I asked him if he wouldn't mind putting his arms around me. He raised his eyebrows, smiled, and slowly rolled towards me. Kirsty, the staff nurse, removed his jacket ever so carefully. Then he unexpectedly vomited blood over me. It just kept coming on my hands and my dress. He became unconscious very quickly. I couldn't do anything to bring him back. He had a DNA CPR form. The note said approaching end of life. I just held on to him, tried to clear his airway, and then he died.
At times like this, I wish I had arms. You eased the pain with your presence, and there's always gentleness in your voice. He died holding on to someone.
While he was vomiting, his wife kept knocking, asking if she could come in yet. She had a Latin and Costa going home. I suspect she knew something was going on. I couldn't have brought her into that as a memory, but who am I to decide? She could have been with him sooner.
The 11th person to get in. The cleaner keeps thinking about the shroud of Turin and Rubik's Cube. Come on in, Dorothy. I know the girls call you Dot. Sometimes I get the impression that hospital cleaners learn how to be anonymous. They quietly wipe germs into non-existence with hands squeezed tight into bright latex blue. You are ghosts roaming the corridors, purging the surfaces of any infections. And when you try to get onto the bed, you always say the same thing. Whoever designed these overalls never had to work in them and probably employed a house cleaner. It's a shift of floors, stairs, my metal doors, and acknowledging how, in the end, we all become invisible.
It is strange not seeing him. We used to talk about everything. After the porters had taken him, his bed was still warm. It didn't seem right to clean it straight away. His indentation was still on the mattress, reminded me of the shroud of Turin. He had a wicked sense of humour. He took 2 sweeteners and no milk. He hated having to have a catheter. He asked me if he wrote a letter to his son, would I make sure his wife got it. I just kept looking around the bed, wondering if he was near, and could he still hear me.
Dot, when you came for the job, no one said that you'd see more of men's private parts than if you worked in a nudist colony. You've seen every type of catheter, nasal tube, chest drain, and stoma, and discovered drawn curtains are useless in keeping people's problems a secret. He felt he could talk to you. You'd quickly bring the nurse with pain relief. You didn't need a thermometer and blood pressure to tell you his condition was getting worse. He felt his son was like a Rubik's Cube, frustrating and too complicated to bring together. The 11th person. The porters push death along the corridors, hoping no one notices. Even before the doors start to open, I know what's coming. It's one of those brief few moments when I think maybe this is how I began. Hospital porters stand at either end of a long box and suspiciously check my floor space to see if I am empty before entering. Heads always turn, conversations cease, and everybody knows this box is an uncomfortable line across the ordinary. The colourful drape pretends it's not death being pushed by silently on wheels.
There is no place called here. All around, only the echo of words. It's not what I thought, because I haven't got any of them anymore. I couldn't stop vomiting. Desperately sorry for the older sister. I could see Doris outside the door, with the latte waiting. I feel I must stay close to myself while I'm still warm, like not wanting to leave the bed in the morning. There are no words here. I'm a sonnet being sung, the thought no longer remembered. It is an utterly different way of being. I can't explain it with any effort. It's easier than living.
My metal container feels like a mortuary fridge. 1,400 times a year, 25 times a week, 3 times a day. And you are the first this morning. The questions in here make me dizzy. It's either a battle between eternity or nothingness. Without the brain, you can't probe for an answer. How can I experience anything of heaven? It can't be what we know because it's not a physical state. I cannot know I'm dead. If I did, I wouldn't be. Because I won't have consciousness, or maybe it's to do with parallel universes. With memory left in the neurons of the brain, how will I know who I am anyway? The 13th person. The son hopes God in his mercy remembers the belt. Ian, you've only just made it. My sliding doors were reluctant. They hesitated, but you squeezed in anyway. Please don't have any big confrontation in here. The porters would have stopped anyone getting in once the long box is occupied, draped and going down to the mortuary, but they knew who you were in your uniform. You surprised one of them when you placed your hand firmly on the lid. You're not letting him get away without having the final word. You've avoided this moment for years, but I can only give you 4 floors to say it all.
Ever since you were admitted, I've said to myself, go and reconcile with him. You don't know how many times I've been here, pacing up and down on sidewalk 24. Even though I can still hear you and Mom arguing, muffled sounds coming up through the floorboards and me under the covers crying, blocking up my ears from all the horrible things being said. It always came to an end when Mum mentioned her name, and you'd hit her, and a long silent nothingness. So many times I thought you'd killed her. So when I'd come downstairs to try and help her, you'd be furious, roar and chase after me, swinging the belt with the other end. Mum said it was complicated, like a tough childhood, illegitimate, abused in the care home. You know what? I couldn't give a fuck. I was 10, and you beat any kind of sympathy out of me. You were stronger at cricket, called me after Ian Bolton. I thought you might be tough. You'd build into me some backbone. That's because you lacked one. You were never kind. I can see you now standing over me, bulging eyes, red face, ranting, swinging all your righteousness. Funny, I never heard you have any fight with anyone of your own size. You wanted forgiveness, a peaceful death, and a fitting end, and I kept hearing Mum crying. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. In your coffin, I'm going to wrap the belt around your hands instead of the rosary.
4th in person. Feeling drained of emotions becomes mist and fog. Doris, it feels not all of you has entered in here. There's a chill where you used to be. Your emptiness turns me into a vacuum. Your thoughts are drifting with no inclination to come together or try and make any sense of things. You watched the waxy shine slowly cover him until he looked still as stone. Now you cannot leave the moment, the room, the bedside. This world has become an unfamiliar place. You cannot fill or occupy any of it. Today, everything seems to be swirls of mist and fog. A plastic bag in either hand, full with the leftovers of a life. Scales of unfairness weighing only the DNA still attached to the towel and pajamas. The whisper of warmth from his wedding ring on your finger is all that's left of him.
A numbness deeper within my bone marrow, asks if there's any purpose in any of it. Find him, Lord, forgive him and bring him near. The cleaner handed me a letter, and the ward sister was lovely. I forgot to ask him if Ian had come to visit when I wasn't there.
The 15th person. The father's letter triggers a new narrative. Down here in the basement where the heart of the hospital pulses, your feet are stopping my doors from closing. Too drained to stand, 3 in the morning, lucky no one needs us. You are a home on fire, even when calm embers glow. Your story will continue to consume you if you keep fanning the flames. Deny it oxygen. Start a new sentence. What is this incendiary past? A scorched narrative where the smoke of memory selectively remembers.
His words feel tender on the page. Small squiggles of regretted letters, lacking in confidence to rise and fall with any flair. He wants to make it rain. He's ashamed his anger ignited it too quickly and snarls petrol in tenderness.
His legacy is ashes, his loss never picking up the child in you. Forgiveness has nothing to do with words. It's understanding the importance of believing in a different ending, where you find a new door out of being the victim.
Lord, the steel floor is as cold as he is tonight, alone in the mortuary. I grew when he watched me play football. His joy when I scored and made a good tackle, that was the real him I never knew. When we entered the game to make believe he was the child, liberated from his past, the door opened he could never find on his own. Lord, of all tangled stories, embrace my resentment, growing like a cancer. We never asked for the surprise of a life and the randomness of who makes up our family. But my response to the challenges makes me who I am. Lord, who lives across the border, bring him to a new adventure. Let me see him happy in my dreams and realise the self we have structured out of the time is all we get to keep.